There are two things that people know about Kona coffee. One is that it is so smooth. It's one of the easiest drinking coffees in the world. But the second one is that it is so stinking expensive. Or is it? You see, what a lot of people will do in videos like this is they'll try to convince you why it has to be so expensive. They'll list the fact that it's grown on an island in the middle of nowhere, that Hawaii has to pay US labor costs, not third world costs, that taxes are high, that it costs a ton of money to bring anything to the island or to export your coffee off the island. Stop. All of that might be true. I mean, it actually all literally is true. But it doesn't really matter why the coffee is too expensive if it's still, at the end of the day, too expensive. But you see, the thing is that for a lot of people watching this video, maybe even most people, Kona coffee is still less expensive than what you're probably paying for coffee right now. Don't believe me? Let's talk about it. Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be comparing the cost of Kona Earth coffee to a couple of other really good specialty coffees, as well as the cost of ordering coffee from a local cafe. And Kona is always going to be more expensive than other specialty coffees that come from other parts of the world for all of those things that I mentioned in the early part of the video. But the thing is that nothing really tastes like Kona coffee. So even though it can be a bit more expensive than things coming from South America or Africa, it's not really a direct comparison because those coffees are not the same as Kona. And, if one of those is your favorite, well then maybe Kona isn't. But for a lot of people, Kona is their favorite coffee because it tastes so good. When we actually get to the numbers comparing this to the coffee shop prices, what you have to understand is that coffee shops are paying for labor, they're paying rent for their building, all of that overhead adds up. And so for them to even be competitive with coffee like this, they can't use a coffee of anywhere near a similar grade to this or the other specialty coffees that we're gonna look at. Those are far and away way better than anything you're gonna get at a shop that's gonna be competing directly with the price point of this coffee. Because of course, a cafe can't pay for premium beans, labor, rent, all of those costs, and be competitive with someone who's only buying the best beans in the world. For those who would want to see a comparison between this coffee and Keurig and Nespresso pods, I'm not going to do that in this video because yes, those are going to be way, way cheaper because they're using super cheap coffee. And there really is no comparison between the taste of pre-capsulized coffee and whole bean coffee. This is why coffee out of a Keurig does not taste nearly as good as coffee from a cafe. Because even though the cafe isn't using top tier expensive coffee, they are using fresh whole bean coffee and they're grinding it right there before they use it. And that is always gonna taste so much better than anything out of a pod or capsule. And that's why Kona Earth doesn't sell Keurig or Nespresso pods, because they're not interested in chasing the convenience market. They're chasing the craft of making the best tasting coffee in the world. And if you wanna try any of the Kona Earth coffees that I'm gonna be featuring today, you can order them at konaearth.com, and for first-time buyers, use the code COFFEETALK for 10% off your first order. Now, the way I'm gonna do the price breakdown is on a per serving basis. So how much is a serving? Well, I figured a 12-ounce brewed coffee or about a 12-ounce Americano should be a good representation of what people want for serving. Sometimes coffee companies are gonna break things down on a cup size, which might be 6 ounces or 8 ounces, something like that. But most people, they're gonna be thinking about 12 ounces is a reasonable serving, so that's what we're gonna go with. And the way we're gonna figure that out for a bag like this is that if you're using a 16:1 ratio or 60 gram per liter ratio, if you wanna make a 12-ounce cup of coffee, you need 21 grams of coffee beans. So we're gonna take the weight of these different bags, we're gonna divide them by 21 grams and figure out how many servings we have, and then divide the cost of the bag by that number of servings, and that'll give us our cost per serving. So looking specifically at the Kona Earth product line, we're gonna start with their classic grade, and that's available in 1 pound, half pound, or in a sample pack. And these are 2-ounce bags, and you get 3 of them in that pack. So the cost for the different sizes of the classic grade is $2.31, $2.38, $4.38. And again, that's per 12-ounce serving. The second tier in their product line is the premium grade, and those are available again in a 1 pound or half pound bag, and the cost is $2.79 and $2.86 for either of these options. And finally, the top of the food chain here, we have the Kona Earth Pea Berry. This is the most expensive coffee they offer, and this guy is gonna run you $3.25 per serving. And this one is only available by the pound, and the sampler pack is only available in the classic grade. So this shows you the spectrum of cost, everything from $2.31 per serving all the way up to $3.25 $2.25 per serving. So if you compare the cost per serving of Kona Earth's coffee to, say, the two coffees we featured back in our tasting video a couple episodes ago, the Kenyan coffee and the Colombian coffee, then yes, these are a lot more expensive because the Kenyan coffee was only $1.42 per serving and the Colombian was $1.40. And that's way, way cheaper than even the most inexpensive coffee here. But here's the thing, most people are not buying specialty coffee. Yeah, a few people are, but it's really a tiny market share. The crux of this video is not trying to compare Kona coffee to other specialty coffees. Yes, it tastes totally unique and nothing tastes like Kona coffee, so it has that going for it. But when you start comparing cost, it's always going to be a premium above things from other parts of the world. Where this really gets interesting is where you compare the cost per serving of these to what you're going to pay at a cafe. Now, I live about an hour south and west of Seattle, which is coffee shop country. And I did a quick pricing search on ordering just a 12-ounce brewed coffee and a 12-ounce Americano, both from a very famous green apron wearing international chain, as well as a totally independent single coffee shop here in my town. And they're not selling specialty coffee, you know, they're trying to compete with the big boys that are just down the road from them. And the cost for a 12-ounce Americano from the chain was a whopping $3.95 before tax, before tip, which is just kind of staggering when you think about the most expensive coffee that Kona sells is only $3.25, and that's a Kona Peaberry, one of the rarest coffees in the entire world. Now, the brewed coffee was a lot cheaper. That was only $2.65 before your tax and tip, and the independent coffee shop was even cheaper. It was $2.80 for an Americano and only $2.60 for brewed coffee. And so when you start looking at Kona coffee to coffee from a cafe, and again, way lower quality when you go to a coffee shop, it's really competitive. The most expensive thing they have here is competitively priced with some of the cheapest things on a coffee shop's menu. Now, I'm not going to act like this means that you should never go to a coffee shop again. I still go to coffee shops because there's something so special and wonderful about going to a coffee shop and having a barista serve you. You know, it's not just the convenience, it's the whole experience and ambiance of the thing. But when you're looking at this price point of, let's say, under $5 per serving, and some of these are way under that, you can really choose one of two things. You can either have convenience, ambiance, experience, right? Going to a coffee shop, or you can have the best coffee in the world, but you gotta brew it yourself at home. And there really is only one way that you can get the best coffee in the world with the convenience and ambiance of a coffee shop, and that's to go to some place that serves specialty coffee. And coffee shops that serve world-class coffee also charge world-class prices. In the next town over from me, about 20 minutes away, there is an independent coffee shop that sources specialty coffee from all over the world. And to order just a cup of brewed coffee from, say, Guatemala or Costa Rica was anywhere from $17 to $22 just for a cup of coffee before tax, before tip. And I'm not gonna act like it isn't worth it to go to a coffee shop and splurge, spend $22, which, you know, it's gonna end up being more like $25 or $28, but spend all of that money on a special cup of coffee that someone prepared for you. But for a lot of us, I think it's worth asking the question, do I want 1 cup of amazing coffee, or do I want half a pound of amazing coffee? The choice is yours. You know, I don't want to act like brewing at home is the only good choice that one can make. I mean, to be honest, there's nothing like going to a great coffee shop with a great atmosphere and great employees, and I think that that is incredibly valuable. Even though the coffee is not going to be as good of a quality as what you can make at home, it's a wonderful experience, and I think there's a reason why coffee shops are still a thing, because they're great. But just know, the next time you go to a coffee shop, that the cheapest thing on the menu costs more than just brewing the best coffee in the world at home. So if you're at all interested in why people love Kona coffee, don't be afraid to give it a try. Because after all, it's still cheaper than what you're already paying.